we're all very happy about this. It's going to be such a game changer. Now, do we have some questions?
What is the big question?
Spoken to the Premier, Prime Minister, and told him about this and what...
No, I haven't spoken to him yet. I've sent him a letter, which is very detailed, and I look forward to speaking to him about it. I'm very confident he will come on board. This is a very rational, business-like proposal. We build it as partners. We're contributing $5 billion. We'd expect Victoria to match that. We think there's the opportunity for partnerships with the private sector. As the Deputy Prime Minister said, there's a huge amount of land here at the airport. There's obviously opportunities to partner with the airport in terms of further development. This can be city-shaping infrastructure to make not just the travel time between the airport and the city faster, but more convenient and reduce congestion, but also add to the livability of Melbourne, which is already one of the world's most livable cities.
You said yourself it's been talked about for decades. When do you expect the first train will actually arrive here?
Well, look, I think the goal would be to get the construction underway within a few years. Obviously, there's going to have to be a lot of planning. I wouldn't want to, at this very early stage, estimate a time, but as soon as possible. I mean, this was first talked about in the mid-1960s. In fact, there was a bill introduced to the Victorian Parliament, I think in 1964, about a railway out to Tullamarine. That was before they built the airport. As Kelly often reminds us, the airport was built before you were born.
Before I was born, well and truly.
Sadly, not before all of us were born. But anyway, regardless of when you were born, it's vital that we get it built.
Could I make one more point on top of that? In last year's budget, we put $30 million into the feasibility study for this project. So this is a process we began in last year's budget, and now we're following through in this year's budget.
Viewers on
that feasibility study, we're expecting to have some work back to us later this year around September, October, and that will provide a lot more detail on these sorts of issues, particularly issue of assessment of routes, and there are a range of options. But the options that you need to consider in this is what's really going to change the city for the better. What's really going to help not only those who come into the airport here from other places and enjoy Melbourne and Victoria more broadly, but the people who work at this airport, the people who work along the way, the people who live along the way. That's what this feasibility study will greatly assist us with.
Do you think financially you'll stack up?
Yes, I do. Of course I do. I mean, we've seen these projects be successful around the world, and it's more amazing that it hasn't happened here yet rather than that it is now happening. But the starter's gun has been fired by the Prime Minister on this, and so let's get to work and get it done.
The partnership with the state government is so important. It's such an important part of providing that half of the funding. Why did you go to the Herald side before the state government?
Oh, well, look, it's very important that we make sure that Melburnians are enthused and engaged. We want everyone in Melbourne to have their say on this. We want this to be a project that enlivens and excites the whole city, in fact, the whole state. And we look forward to, as we go through this process, working with the state government. You'll get lots of submissions from citizens and local government. You'll get submissions from the private sector about how they look. This is the new way the federal government works on infrastructure in cities. This is how we're working on the Western Sydney Airport and the North-South Rail Link in Western Sydney and in other parts of the country. We want to work, as Scott said, as partners. This is a project. We're not talking about just cutting a cheque to the state government and walking away. We're talking about working together, building this as partners. And this is what everyone says. Doesn't everyone say, oh, wouldn't it be great if the governments could work together? Well, that's what we're proposing to do, 50-50, and we put our money on the table.
But the Victorian government what its priorities should be in terms of...
Well, the Victorian Premier himself said that this airport rail link was a high priority. In fact, I referred to that in the first paragraph of my letter to him, just in case he'd forgotten what he said late last year. So, look, I'm very confident that we'll be working together on this, and I know this airport link has been a top priority of Victorians and Melburnians for many years, decades, in fact.
When did you send that letter? When did you send the letter to Premier Andrews?
We sent it last night. Late
last night?
Yeah, sure. Midnight? Apparently, yes, that's right.
It's a $5 billion investment, though. Does that not Would that not warrant more consultation or even perhaps a joint announcement with the state government?
Well, look, I think you're interested in the politics and the process. Your viewers are interested in when this project will be built and being able to get out of their car and get the train to the airport, and if they're still on the roads in their car, having less congestion, and that's what it's going to deliver.
You put $5 billion on the table, though, and you haven't consulted the Victorian government. So what happens if the Victorian government doesn't come to the party and cough up $5 billion, which is quite a significant hit?
Well, I've got no doubt that the Victorian Premier was serious when he said at the end of last year that this was a top priority and he wanted this project to be built. And he talked about work commencing by 2025. Well, we think we can bring that forward by quite a number of years. But he has shown a commitment to it. Well, what we're doing is, and look, he's not Robinson Crusoe. A lot of Victorian premiers going back to Henry Bolte have said they have a commitment to a rail link to the airport, but none of them have built it. So what we're doing now is bringing this to a head, putting $5 billion on the table and offering to work together as equal partners in a 50-50 partnership. Now, we'll just have one more question.
The state government's talked about the improvement to regional rail along with this. Are you making a commitment to improving the regional rail network as part of this plan?
Well, we've already committed, and I'll ask Michael to say more about that. We've already committed $1.4 billion to regional rail, but Michael, do you want to add to that?
And look, with the intergovernmental agreement on Melbourne to Brisbane freight rail, another important infrastructure project, $9.1 billion committed to that project in last year's budget. We provided $135 million to the Northeast rail link. And just yesterday, I was with Sarah Henderson, the member for Corangamite, talking about rail projects in her electorate. And look, we're investing millions of dollars in Victorian regional rail because regional commuters are just as important as anybody else, and they'll certainly also be able to take advantage of this amazing announcement today.
Prime Minister, can we ask you about Syria?
Yeah.